All right, everybody, Sports Recall. Today, bringing sports. Yes, with the world of comic books, just when you didn't think it could happen, we made it happen. Today, we've got Nate Wunderman of Wunderman Comics. Nate, welcome.
Thank you, Kareem.
Wanted to talk to you. You've got two ongoing comic series right now.
Yes.
Earth Invasion.
Yes.
And Time Core.
Correct.
And I see the EI. Tell us about Earth Invasion, a little bit about it.
EI is the first comic that I created. It's based off of an idea I had when I was an anthropology major at USC.
Okay.
And I was doing coursework on the Yanomami Indians in the Amazon. And they have the unfortunate problem of living in the jungle with some woods where bootleg loggers like their the logs and stuff.
Area where
and if they resist, the bootleg loggers come in and hose them with machine guns.
Oh.
Yeah, it's nasty business. So I thought, you know what? What if this happened to the planet Earth, where the planet Earth, we are subject to attack from a criminal gang from outer space? And that is the idea of the comic book.
Okay, excellent. Almost like, well, no, I don't want to compare it to anything else because I'm sure it's got to have
Well,
some
there's
new
a
twist.
yes, there is a twist, where what happens is that about a year or so in, a defector from the mothership of the aliens, of the criminal gang, is more like it, gets off because he'd been shanghaied, and he gives mankind, the means which his race, whom are an advanced insect, how they rose to power, which was a universal communications chip. And then what happens is they inject animals into it, so it's humans and animals versus the space mafia, out to plunder the planet.
Humans, animals, space mafia.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sold. I'm ready to read
Humans
my
and
first.
talking animals versus the baddies from outer space.
Got it. Okay, now tell me a little bit about Time Core.
Time Core is where I'm borrowing a bit from Chinese mythology, where they have this idea of that heaven is a celestial bureaucracy.
Okay.
And if there's anything a bureaucracy hate, is where people cannot be labeled, identified, categorized. And there's an idea that you have people who are not good enough for heaven and not bad enough for hell. So the Time Core are wondering, okay, what are we going to do with them? Okay, well, since the construction of time-space isn't exactly all that well done, there's holes, and so people pop in and out when they don't belong to. The timeline continuity department of the celestial bureaucracy hires these people, these unassignables, and makes them into the Time Core. And depending upon how they perform when they're in the Time Core, it winds up where they wind up their final disposition, heaven or hell.
Something tells me that when you're reading Time Core, you're going to have to pay attention to details.
That is correct. That is very correct. Absolutely. But then, you know what? Good sci-fi has big ideas. If you look at some of the great sci-fi that's been put out, it has big ideas. Star Trek has big ideas. Battlestar Galactica. All of it. And in fact, that's what's great about sci-fi as a genre, is that it allows you to expand and really talk about a lot of different things, a lot of big ideas, where a lot of other genres, you can't get into that.
Right. And now, I mean, you're talking about sci-fi.
Yes.
You're talking about comic books.
Yes.
But when you were at Southern Cal,
Yes.
your major was
Anthropology.
And it seems like you took a lot of that knowledge, a lot of that interest you have as kind of inspiration behind these stories.
Absolutely. Spot on. Absolutely spot on, without a doubt. I'm proud to say my comics are informed by my major. That is correct.
Okay. So would you say it's kind of taking reality and just adding an element of fantasy to it? Or do you think that maybe as wild as some of these comics can look, you're really just getting back to some basic human issues?
Yes, the second bit. You get into some human issues, and that's what's great about sci-fi, is that you can examine them and really talk about them in a way that in a lot of other genres you cannot. I hate to go back to Star Trek. For instance, on Star Trek was a groundbreaker in that for American TV, where you had Lieutenant Uhura. First time you had a black woman on TV in a position of responsibility.
It's true.
First interracial kiss on American television, Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura. The cabin crew, you had a multiracial cabin crew who were all in positions of respect. And this was in the 60s in America. And you thought, oh my God, this is completely wacky. But Gene Roddenberry got away with it because it's sci-fi. See, that's the beauty of sci-fi.
Creative license you gotta love.
Bingo, without a doubt.
So what are you up to nowadays, Nate? Tell us about your latest project.
I was recruited by the founder of SportsRecall, Janice Clark, to create an exclusive sports-themed humor comic that's going to be exclusively spool out on the site.
Okay.
Called It's the Johnson.
It's the Johnson, and I don't want to ruin things or give too much of it, but what can you tell us about it?
What I can say is that I was presented with the challenge of how to come up with the property, where you do some sort of bit where you do some editorial humor comment, but then you also want to get into the narrative form, which you're talking the 3-panel narrative form you see in a daily comic. Mm-hmm. Whereas the editorial cartoon is one image, and that's a little bit harder because you also can't get into character, backstory, and that sort of thing that keeps people coming back.
Right.
So what I did with ITJ is create a combination of the two, where it takes place in one place, but we have this one character who is trapped in a sort of like a time-space continuum and always winds up at these places here and there and just can't get out.
Okay. Now, obviously you know about comics. We've talked about the influence from the anthropology, but we know that you would not have been recruited by SportsRecall unless you were a big sports nut, just like me, just like everybody else out there.
Cuckoo, you betcha.
And we were talking earlier, it seems like if you had a favorite sport, it seems that it is the global game.
You betcha, absolutely, without a doubt. Well, I'm originally from Belgium, and I immigrated here to America when I was 6 years old, so it's sort of natural. And I am of average size, and that happened to be the sport where I was best at, because the great thing about soccer is that there is a position for everybody, no matter what size you are in that game. If you can make the cut and you can play, no matter if you're 5'2" or 6'6", there's a spot for you on that field.
What were your favorite soccer players growing up?
Well,
or who were your favorite soccer players growing up, I should say?
Yes, when I was growing up, well, one is this great Belgian goalkeeper named Jean-Marie Pfaff. If it was not for him, Belgium would have never made it to the semifinals of the 1986 World Cup. Big man. Hair. He actually had a reality TV show about him after he retired. That was the biggest reality show hit in Belgium. Also, I love Johan Cruyff, the Dutch star, whom didn't have great athletic ability, but had the vision from God, where it was just, he could see and pass, and it was amazing. I also had the privilege of seeing Carlos Valderrama play when he was with the Miami Fusion, where he would just walk and get open into space. The Galaxy, I remember one time when they played the Galaxy in the Rose Bowl, and they assigned a defender to man mark him as soon as he hit the 50-yard line. Didn't matter. Valderrama, walk into space, boom, easy business, penetrating pass, made their back line look terrible.
Still had the hair flying around.
Oh, man. At times, even though his man marker was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, Valderrama, just easy business, ho-hum. And then I was also lucky enough to see Zinedine Zidane play for France in both the 1998 World Cup and in the Euro 2000 and the 2000 Euro, when he was at the height of his powers.
Okay, so I mean, you've seen top-notch, world-class soccer, sounds like here and abroad.
That is correct.
You've also been lucky enough to cover it from kind of, another aspect in that you wrote about it.
That is correct. I actually was a beat writer covering the LA Galaxy for a variety of soccer-specific websites for about 5 years, with the whole bit with the press pass and the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Okay. Does it take away from being a fan? Because I think about, no matter what it is, no matter what the sport, I'm a fan, I'm there, you want to see the action, you want to catch every little detail. but you're also there in the capacity of a writer. Does it take away from the fan experience when you're there as a writer, or does it not matter? You're just happy to have a ticket?
You know what? If you go into it with the idea that, okay, these guys, these athletes, they're people too.
Mm-hmm.
And that what you're getting to see is you're going to see a little bit more of them than see what the sort of other person would see because of the locker room situation or the practice situation.
Right.
It's as long as you remember that they're people, it's not that different because what you do get to see is that on a more regular basis is how they perform. You're lucky enough when you cover beat writing that if you're not lazy, you actually get to watch practice.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see how they better themselves. How they and me, I've also coached high school soccer myself, so I actually took the opportunity to go pinch some good drills that I could use. Because I'm sure you may have heard the old saying, good coaches borrow, great coaches steal.
There you go. If you can use it, you can use it.
Absolutely.
So would you say being able to see the team, not just in games, but on a daily, you get to see the more human side of
Yes.
it. But also kind of admire, the work ethic, things like that.
Absolutely. And soccer, especially as a sport, if you don't work, you will be exposed.
Okay, so sooner or later it's going to get laid out there.
Easily, and especially if you consider the size of the field, because you have to remember the size of a playing field. A soccer field is longer and wider than an American football field, but still the same number of guys.
This is true.
And unlike, say, American football, where you're talking about 2/3 of the actual clock time they're standing around, you're moving around. And especially what happens is the last 10 or 15 minutes of game when your legs are rubber, that is when character comes out.
All the soccer games, matches that you've been to, what is the most raucous pitch you've been on, the most raucous stadium that you can remember?
Athlone Stadium in the flats of Kajalica in Cape Town, where I saw Cape Town Ajax play Kaiser Chiefs.
Okay, so
Kaiser Chiefs are the team of Soweto in Joburg,
mm-hmm.
and Cape Town Ajax are sort of represent the townships of Cape Town.
Got it.
And there's a bit of a rivalry going on there.
It sounds like there's more than a bit of a rivalry.
Yes, you could say that, but yes, you could.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky to attend some matches, but it was more, friendlies, exhibitions. But sometimes when I see these things on TV, we think as, here in America, they talk about fans yelling and screaming, but
It is
football fans around the world.
It is nothing. If you want to talk about passion, where people just at times lose their mind and their whole existence, the highlight of their week is that 2 or 3 hours where they're in the stadium cheering on their team. It's a person's whole world.
Right.
And
exactly.
not only that, if you look at the rest of the world, it also takes on a political dimension. Look what happened in Egypt, where in the Arab Spring in Cairo, the people who were fighting off Mubarak's thugs were the ultras from Al Ahly and Zamalek, the two big Cairo soccer teams. And also in Argentina, whenever it's River Plate versus Boca Junior, it's bad news all the way around.
Sounds like it.
It is.
Now, we're talking about sports, we're talking about soccer, we're talking about comic books. Thinking of all the athletes
Yes.
that are playing now, what athlete would you say is the most like an actual comic book character? And that maybe sometimes this individual does not seem 100% human.
I would have to say, playing now, because I would have said Zinedine Zidane or
Mhm.
Carlos Valderrama,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the sheer vision, the ease, where I'm sure you've heard that saying, the men amongst boys,
Mm-hmm.
where their vision, where they just sort of glided on the field,
Definitely.
They just glided on and just did their thing, easy peasy, easy business, and everybody else is running around them with panic look on their faces saying, oh man, he is going to kill us.
Got it. So those would be the superheroes.
Oh, without a doubt. But Zizou especially, because I will say this for Zizou. Zizou won a World Cup.
This is true. All documented. Man. Okay, so we're talking comic books earlier. We're
Yes.
talking about athletes. What athlete can you think of that most resembles a comic book character to you? When you just look at this person perform and you're thinking, can they really be just 100% human?
I would say it's a tie between two of my favorites who I got the pleasure to see. Carlos Valderrama and Zinedine Zidane. And more because of when they were on the field, it was like that classic bit of boys, men amongst boys.
Okay.
Where they just glided to their position where they needed to be, made a great pass, and it looked as easy as if they were just walking the dog.
Right, almost you forget that it's other professionals that they're out there playing
Absolutely. They made them all look quite bad.
Okay.
And the other team are in panic mode going, he's going to kill us! And they did.
Right. Well, hey, that's why they ended up having the careers that they did.
Oh, absolutely. Zizou was sublime. Sublime.
Okay. Now, as far as yourself, you create characters, you create storylines. If you were yourself in a comic, or not in a comic, let's say real life, if you could draw yourself or give yourself a superpower, which one would you pick?
The ability to go back in time and record things in history that are in doubt.
Oh.
That where there's some sort of, I'd go back and see what happened to the colony in Roanoke.
Go back to see if anybody actually was on the grassy knoll or not.
Whatever, exactly. Exactly.
I
Where,
just use that because people have been talking about it forever, but
yes,
anthropology, history, a lot of it is highly debated.
debated, and then you try to glean what evidence is available, and stuff has gotten murky because that old saying, the winners write history.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually want to go back, and I would want to go back and see like you see paintings of famous people before photographs. Do they actually look the way they were depicted?
That would be something I'd be interested in. Definitely be interested in. So we might have to work on that. Not that I'm in the superpower business, but if I was, I'm finding you first, Nate.
Okay.
All right. Next, we go to the magic questions. These coming in from some of our SportsRecall followers.
Okay.
We've got Brittany from California wants to know, who is your favorite character that you've created?
My favorite character I've created is in Time Corps, is the station chief of the substation of the Time Corps, who's in charge. His name is Gaius Equitus Brutus. He was a cavalry centurion whose unit suffered the penalty of decimation for cowardice, and he drew the short straw. He kind of likes living in this time because in the comic book, the substation, it takes place in this time, and he much prefers this time as opposed to the time he was living in, and he doesn't want to leave anytime soon.
Okay. Next up, we got Jacob from Oregon. Jacob wants to know, who is your favorite villain?
In my comic or in
Any villain.
The Joker.
The Joker, okay.
He is psychotic, he is smart, he never gives up.
And he has that purple suit.
And he grabs attention.
No, that's true. He does have kind of a flair for...
He has a flair for the dramatic.
There you go.
He's always inventive. Love him.
Okay. Now, talking about the Joker, Batman comic books, do you have a collection as well?
Yes, I do. Guilty as charged.
All right. This is good because Bruce from Ohio wants to know, what is the favorite comic book in your collection?
My most valuable is an X-Men number 4 from 1964 that is in very fine condition.
Okay.
And I would say my personal favorite, is my first issue of EI number 1.
There we go. Now, would you put that amongst your greatest achievements or just things that you're most proud of that you've been able to accomplish?
Yes, because in the realm of comic books, if you go to like conventions, you run into a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm writing something. Oh, I'm doing something." The thing is to get from point A, thinking about it, to point Z, finished good, is a whole different thing. And guess what? Most folks don't make it that far.
Right, but hey, you've got the proof in terms of first edition, your name on it, your character, your stories, your ideas. I'm just thinking, being there from start to finish, that's got to be a satisfying feeling.
Absolutely, without a doubt, absolutely.
Is there anything else you collect besides comic books? Everybody collects something. I know my little brother happens to be the biggest comic book collector I know. But aside from comics, anything else you collect?
I collect soccer jerseys.
Oh.
I have an autographed Eric Cantona for Manchester United. I have autographed Galaxy jersey, Landon Donovan, several others. And then also, whenever I travel, I try to pick up about 2 or 3 jerseys of wherever I happen to go, but not the usual suspects that you can get, like online or whatever. Like everybody's got Barcelona or Real Madrid. So, like for instance, last year I went to Cusco, Peru, and I went and got several jerseys from the local team, Cienciano. Or say my brother went to Colombia last year, he got me one for Millonarios. So I have about 60, 70 jerseys, but just more from not the usual suspects.
A little more off the beaten path.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. Nate, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Before we go, why don't you tell everybody out there where they can get more information about your comics?
Thank you. You can get more information about my comics at www.wundermancomics.com, WUNDERMAN comics.com.
That's a long last name.
Yes, it is. They are available also on iTunes, Amazon, and Nook.
Well, good. Hey, I think that covers about all the bases. And we'll be looking for It's the Johnson.
It's the Johnson on Sports Recall. It's going to rock.
I think so.